Okay, hello everyone. So before we get into introductions, before we get into who I am, who my lovely trusted guest is, I want to give a disclaimer or better yet, a trigger warning. So the subject that we're going to be talking about for this segment is suicide ideation. And it is a intense subject, it is a sensitive subject, and it may be overwhelming for some. So please only watch and listen at your own discretion. And if you do listen or watch and you find yourself in need of immediate support for a mental health crisis, please call 911. Do not hesitate. Or you can call or text 988, which is the suicide crisis and suicide lifeline. Or you can also text home to 741-741. Okay, now that we got the disclaimer out the way, I am so joyed and so thankful that I have a trusted colleague with me today, Flora, and I'm going to give her the floor in just a second. But I am so thankful that I am able to speak on this topic, or we are able to speak on this topic of suicide ideation awareness. So, this presentation is not going to focus on suicide, it's going to focus more on just the ideation. Suicide is multifaceted. It is extremely complex. It has different levels. There are levels before you actually get to an actual attempt to end your life. So we're focusing on step one, just the ideation of it. And in communities of color, this is very stigmatized and it is very, very shunned and shameful to some. So we just want to come to you as mental health professionals, as women of color, and say, hey, suicide ideation is a thing. It is real. It is not something that should be swept under the rug or it's taboo. This is normal for some and it's part of the human experience for some individuals. So, with that shared, I am Bianca Whitaker. I am the practice owner of Whitaker Counseling and Consulting, where my mission is to educate, normalize, and empower. And I have no doubt at all that this presentation is going to do just that. The conversations I had preparing with Flora before we even began recording, I'm like, let's stop. Like, we got to record this. We got to record this. Like, we're going so hard right now. So let's record this. And so I'm just hoping that if nothing else, that this presentation just edifies. And again, it's going to be more of a conversation style. We're not here to preach to you. We're just here to give you some real life information and some insights that we have being BIPOC and being part and being mental health professionals. So right now, without further ado, I'm going to let Flora take the floor and introduce yourself, your business, and just who are you and why should we trust you, girl?
Hi, everyone. My name is Flora Martinez Vazquez. I am the practice owner of Florecer Counseling Services. My practice, I specialize in the Hispanic Latina community, specifically the immigrant community, first generation, women of color, mothers, all that good stuff. I created my practice with the Latina community in mind because of the stigma that is so prevalent in our community. I just wanted to bring that awareness into my community, educating about things that we may not know of, that we've never heard before. And I think suicide ideation is a very big one. It's something that's not talked about. It's something that when you hear someone or you hear suicide, you automatically think, oh, that person's crazy. And that's not what's happening. There's a lot of things going on. So I'm just really glad to be here and be doing this with Bianca and talking about something that's very important within our communities.
So for this subject, we have broken everything down into 5 topics. So we're going to talk about suicide versus suicide ideation. No, they are not the same, and no, they're not always linked. We'll then get into self-harm and self-injury. Then we're going to address some misconceptions. So again, like we mentioned, we're women of color. So it's important that we address some of these bias and prejudices that exist in our communities. And then we'll get into a little bit with lyrics and social media, or just how things are presented. And then we will culminate everything with ending with how can we show up? Because it's a real matter. And after we get into some of this, you guys are probably gonna be like, oh snap, I know somebody, or oh snap, I think I've done that before. This is not to judge anyone or judge yourself. Give yourself grace. Again, we are all having the human experience without a rule book. There's no rule book to this thing called life. So we
Mhm.
are figuring it out. And if this happened to be part of your norm at one point or something that has crossed your mind, it's part of your human experience.
Mhm.
So let's get into it. Suicide versus suicide ideation. So you will see two very basic like definitions or descriptions. So suicide is the act of intentionally ending your life.
Mhm.
And then you have suicide ideation, where it's thoughts of ending your life, or you have a wish or desire to die or not be alive, or you can engage in suicide related behaviors. So even when you're looking at the definitions, it's kind of like, wait, what? Like thoughts, wish, desire, behavior, completely different from like, yeah, I'm done, I'm out of here. Kind of what you hear, or what are some of the premonitions when you hear suicide. One thing I do want to read, and then we'll get into a discussion, Flora, is I looked up some stats from the CDC. And
Mhm.
in 2022, so don't tell them what the numbers are now, but I appreciated that this data was after COVID,
Yeah.
after the entire world had to experience the same thing at the same time. It
Mhm.
says that at least 13.2 million people seriously consider suicide.
Mhm.
I have no doubt in my mind that this number is way off. And
Mhm.
I'm saying that as a person of color, where in Black communities, we're not always about to just report that or talk about it or admit it. So, yeah. So just kind of sharing the information that's present for us, Flora. I'll let you go ahead and just get into it. Share some of your thoughts of what resonated with you.
Like you said, I also appreciate that the stats are after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder what that looked like during COVID, when the
Mm-hmm.
isolation was happening, when
Absolutely.
there was people that they didn't have anybody else to isolate with, and it was just themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when there's those people that were thinking about what will the world look like now after this.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of what ifs going on during COVID, and like you said, I'm pretty sure that number is not accurate. There's probably a lot more than what is being reported. And like you said, within our communities, we're not going to say out loud, I was thinking this.
Absolutely.
Because why are you going to say it? Whatever you're thinking stays inside of you or inside of the family, and that doesn't go outside of the community or even your immediate family.
Absolutely. Something to piggyback off you, you mentioned what was happening during COVID. Something that resonated when you said that was a lot of people lost their escape,
Mm-hmm.
where some people feel safer outside of their homes.
Mm-hmm.
Or even just to be transparent, I feared for my life when I was a teenager in my home environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I could not imagine what my life would have been if I was stuck in the home,
Mm-hmm.
unsafe, So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Something that I want to, because the slide is up where it says engaging in suicide related behavior. One thing I want to mention is reckless behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Something we often hear culturally, across cultures of, well, whatever happens, happens. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's said so passively. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, guys, that may be ideation where people are doing things and okay, if I happen to die, I happen to die.
Mm-hmm.
So think about like driving recklessly without your seatbelt. Think
Mm-hmm.
about going into environments where it's not going to be safe. Like you're
Yeah.
taking these huge risks because you don't want to take your life, but you also don't see the value in living. So
Mm-hmm.
that is ideation too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or taking, like you said, heavy amounts of alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
mixing it with other substances that you know can cause something, but at that point you're like, okay, whatever's gonna happen, happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the idea to everything that you're doing recklessly.
Absolutely. And then that second point says a wish or desire to die.
Mm-hmm.
If we often hear people, and even for myself, I'm also a school counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So I sometimes hear students or even parents say, like, I just wish I could go to sleep. And when I wake up, all this is over.
Mm-hmm.
That's ideation. It's having this desire or this wish or this hope that you don't have to be part of the present. Like,
Uh-huh.
and that gets so missed. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to die. I just don't want to be here right now. Or I just want to wake up once, this person is done visiting or this part of my life is through, not enduring, wanting to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, what do you think about that?
I've had, I've heard, like you said, of people talking about that, saying, I want to go to sleep and not wake up.
Hmm.
It's a little different than yours. It's, I want to go to sleep and not wake up.
Yeah. Hmm.
And they're like, oh, that's just something that I'm feeling. It's normal.
Hmm.
It's suicide ideation. They may not see it as that, but that's what it is. You're
Yeah.
thinking actively not engaging in the life that you have now.
Hmm.
Or there's some that say, I don't want to be me. I want to be somebody else.
Hmm.
If if that's a whole different thing too.
That's so I was like, girl, you already setting up my part too. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. You said not wanting to actively engage in the life you're living. Girl, you need to put that on a shirt. That was it. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I know
Yeah.
you educated, but that was like textbook. Okay. I like that because it's very succinct, but it's also very true. I
Hmm.
don't want to be part of this,
Yeah.
and it makes me think. I know we're going to get into that later, but it also makes me think of just some of these people who are idolizing lives that they won't have,
Oh yeah.
or lives that are presented a certain way on
Hmm.
media, through media.
Yeah. Of these influencers, celebrities, content
Hmm.
creators that are presenting to you or to the masses the life that they think you want to see, but they may not be living that life. But you're
Hmm.
actively searching or seeking that life that it may very well be fake.
Absolutely. Because I don't want to be part of mine.
Yeah.
Like if I had to live my life, I wouldn't want to be here. But if I create a different one, if I could
Hmm.
live through vicariously, um,
Hmm.
yeah. So I'm just hoping, if nothing else on this topic, this slide, that people are taking away that ideation is very common
Hmm.
across the cultures and it presents different ways. It is not just wanting to kill yourself. It
Yeah.
is not just wanting to kill yourself. I'm going to say that one more time.
Hmm.
Suicide ideation is not just wanting to kill yourself. Again, some people may not want to be present. They may not want to actively engage in the lives they're living. They may not want to be alive. That doesn't mean that they want to kill themselves. So you got
Hmm.
to be very mindful of that. So now you're going to lead us off and we're going to talk about self harm and self injury.
Well, self-harm, self-injury, the formal name is non-suicidal self-injury. Um, it could be caused by different reasons,
Mm-hmm.
different traumas. Everybody has a different reason on why they actively choose to self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
Self-harm is usually a way of relief. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling sad, angry, you decide that you do not want to kill yourself, but you want to hurt yourself to let go of those emotions that you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is here, then I would feel better.
Mm-hmm.
The that I'm feeling will go away, but it's momentarily. It's in the
Yeah.
moment that goes away. It's not a feeling that self-harm is not a treatment, right? It's
Right.
a um an escape of how you're feeling in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just the release of that pain that you're feeling. It doesn't matter what emotions they are, it's pain. And the way you're dealing with it is in a way that you're hurting yourself to a point where you're not going to kill yourself, but you are actively hurting yourself.
Absolutely. And something that's so important is that it is not the gateway or the scapegoat to suicide. So,
Hmm.
being a school counselor, thinking about children,
Hmm.
we have children who self-harm. They hit themselves, they bite themselves, they slap themselves, they'll poke themselves with a pencil. Guys, that's self-injury. And
Hmm.
so a lot of times, and I'm thinking about our communities, we lack emotional language as a
Hmm.
whole. Not to say that we don't have it. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm not saying that we can't attain it. I'm saying that it is not as common as it may be in some other cultures.
Hmm.
And without that emotional language, without that emotional identification, without that emotional awareness, you get overwhelmed.
Hmm.
There's so often that people are like, well, I feel some type of way.
Yeah.
What's the way? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, let's get there
Yeah.
so we can start
Uh-huh.
something. And I'm not judging it, shout out, rest in peace, Rich Homie Quan, right? Because that was the anthem, okay? That
Mhm.
was the anthem. I feel some type of way. But I'm thinking about right now in this space of just thinking of children, right?
Mhm.
Because it goes again to adults because adults are not modeling that for children. They're not
Mhm.
having those conversations because I don't have it, right?
Yeah.
So I get angry, and instead of telling my child or my niece or nephew or my sibling, hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, with the what's going on right now. Can I take a break? It's I'm about to cuss your ass out. You
Yeah.
get what I'm saying? Or I'm about to hit you because right now I just need you to stop.
Or
So
you're so annoying. Stop talking.
exactly, versus saying, hey, right now that's too much for me. So now thinking for people who do not express that and people who internalize. Even being an educator, I say when a kid externalizes their behavior, they're gonna throw their chair, they're gonna cuss their teacher out, they're gonna do them things. It's almost like, whew, okay, because we know what's going on. The
Mhm.
babies who don't say anything, that
Yeah.
are internalizing, those
Mhm.
are the ones that I'm so worried about because I am going to bite myself when I'm overwhelmed. Why? Because I don't know what to do with the feelings. I can't see them. I just feel them and I don't like that feeling and I don't know what to do with it. But if
Mhm.
I slap myself,
Mhm.
that'll make sense. Then I would
Yeah.
know why I'm hurting. If I bite myself, then that would make sense. I had to connect it to a parent one time. She was like, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And I said, imagine someone ready to fight. They in the street, they took off their shirts, they got muscle shirts on, they like, let's go, right? They're so amped up, it's so much, and then they start beating their chest,
Mhm.
and so, and of course, that's not why people always do it, but I had to connect it to her that in that moment, there's so much going on in me, I don't know what to do, I have a release.
Yeah.
She was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yeah, just kind of think of it in that way. They are experiencing something inside that they cannot communicate and it's so uncomfortable. But if I do this, it will make sense why I'm hurting.
Mhm.
So yeah, but the formal term, non-suicidal. I do not want to end my life. I
Mhm.
want to hurt myself. And it is a form of punishment for some
Yes.
people. Some people feel I don't deserve to eat.
Mhm.
I don't deserve to be happy in this moment.
Mhm.
It's This is more common than people think, but it is not a scapegoat or a gateway to ideation.
No.
So we just wanted to make that part
I
clear.
think I also want to add
Yeah.
that when it comes to children, parents lack empathy.
Girl, let me sip my tea.
They do lack empathy of what their
Mm-hmm.
children are feeling. As adults, we tend to think children can't feel the way that we feel.
Mm,
They have it easy. They
mm-hmm.
don't have nothing to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
But if we go back to thinking when we were that age, because we were so worried about ourselves and what's going on within us, everything is like the end of the world. And to
Mm-hmm.
them, that's exactly how it feels.
Absolutely.
And when for them, self-harming is the release of that pain or that stress,
Mm-hmm.
those emotions they're feeling, and parents are not being empathetic, that's the way that they're dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being angry, instead of being upset, instead
Yeah.
of punishing them, but understanding how to help them deal with those emotions, how to talk about the emotions, how to say, I am feeling this way because of this.
Right. Co-regulate.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't teach regulation of our emotions to our children, they're not going to be able to regulate it themselves.
But a lot
And
of
that's,
adults can't. A
mm-hmm.
lot of adults can't.
Yeah.
A lot of adults, I'm gonna pop off, I'm gonna yell, I'm about to throw some, I'm about to slam doors, I'm about to throw but something that when you said that, immediately I thought of, and I thank you for sharing that, and I want to put this in the space. Flora is a mother. So she's not just out here bashing parents. She is a mother of a
Yes.
son. So
Yes.
let's clear the air there, because we also have to think about who, right? And that said that we're in these times of giving information, and we have to give so many disclaimers, but we get it because these are topics, especially if you wasn't ready to hear that truth, that hurt and you took it
Mm-hmm.
personally. Now, instead of me dealing with it, let me project it and let me blame and accuse and all these other things. But
Yeah.
something else that resonated for me is that, and I'm not going to say parents, I would just say adults when it comes to children,
Mm-hmm.
lack curiosity. Be
Mm-hmm.
curious.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Not even why. Be curious, because why has judgment, right? So we're gonna give them some knowledge. We don't usually, as mental health professionals, ask why, because that comes
Mm-hmm.
with judgment, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
finite answer a lot of times. So be curious about what will
Mm-hmm.
make my person want to do this to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
How else do they know to deal with or regulate with what
Mm-hmm.
they're dealing with? So just the curiosity, take the
Mm-hmm.
judgment. When you take judgment out of things, then you become curious. What would make them do that?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Or how can I help? How long you been doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just be curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to come up at the end when we get back to talking about ideation. So,
Yeah.
Flora, was there any last minute note you wanted to make on self harm?
No, we're good.
Okay, let's keep it moving. So now, you ready? Take a deep breath. Do we need to do some grounding? Do we need to do some check in? Do we need to do some bilat? Like, what do we need to do? We're about to get into some misconceptions, and I will say this topic and how to show up were the most prevalent for me in
Mm-hmm.
giving this information out. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about educate, normalize, and empower, like the mission, like this is it. So we're going to get into some biases and prejudices regarding suicide ideation. And so the first thing that I wanted to start with is just some data. So I'm Black. What? And growing up, I always heard suicide is a white people thing.
Mm-hmm.
White people take their lives. And as depressed and suicidal as I was myself, I'm like, I don't think that's true. Like, I don't, right? So now there's shame that comes along with that. So
Mm-hmm.
I am showing this data right now to show y'all this is not a white people thing. Look at the highest rate. It is Indigenous and Alaskan Natives. Like, it's not a white people thing. It's not. Like, the data is right here. White
Mm-hmm.
people are not first. So we can't say that. And what is so moving is that their population is so low.
Yeah.
So for them to be so outnumbered by other demographics, but yet have the highest rate, that
Mm-hmm.
says a lot. This
Mm-hmm.
is not a white people thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is very prevalent. And then, it kind of goes down. It goes to multiracial. And then
Mm-hmm.
you get into non-Hispanic Blacks because Blacks can be Hispanic,
Yeah.
just in case people didn't know.
Yeah.
And then you get to the Hispanic. And
Mm-hmm.
I am so curious, Flora, as you look at this data, the demographic that you serve, what comes to mind or resonates for you when you look at this data?
I would say it's off. Um, in the Latinx community or the Latina community, suicide is not talked about.
Mhm.
Suicide ideation is not talked about.
Yeah.
Your emotions are not talked about.
Mm.
It's very stigmatized. You can't say, I need help. I need to see someone because
Mhm.
you're automatically labeled, oh, that person's crazy.
Mhm.
They have something going on with themselves. They need help that is for crazy people and not for normal human beings because
Absolutely.
we're all normal human beings. We all feel the emotions. We all go through tough times in life that we need to process and discuss with a therapist. So yeah, definitely that number to me seems a bit small.
Mhm.
Um, as well as we don't talk about it.
Mhm.
You don't tell your business to random people. These rates are done by medical professionals in
Mhm.
surveys.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
they're done by different individuals that you don't just outright and tell them, this is how I'm feeling,
Right.
or this is what happened in my family, or this is what happened with me.
Yeah.
So, this number can very well be wrong. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a lot more, maybe even doubled than what it is.
Mhm.
But it's
Yeah.
something that's just not talked about. And that's why we're here, right? We're
Mhm.
destigmatizing this. We're trying to
Absolutely.
bring awareness to suicide ideation. That's the first step before we even totally get into
To the different
suicide.
levels.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And yes, I concur with this is off. And we have
Mhm.
to remember that when things are reported, it goes off what's on the death certificate.
Mhm.
So it can look one way, but we don't know if that was the out.
Yeah.
But again, we're focusing on ideation, but I definitely agree with you that these numbers are off. And if anything, now I'm curious of look how high other demographics are, non-white demographics are. So
Mhm.
it's like imagine if their number was off, you
Mhm.
But you said something that once I want to kind of get into some of the prejudice talk and a language that's being used, and you was like, yeah, we don't talk about that because that's for crazy people. Like, even labeling, having that in your mind is a prejudice. You are prejudging someone's
Mm.
situation that, oh, they crazy. And
Yeah.
so, and one thing that's really important, stay away from cliches. You hear
Mm.
sometimes when people are talking about or suicide ideation or suicide that it was a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Oh,
Dead
yeah.
that. Dead that. It's not
Mm-mm.
temporary for that person. Like
Mm-mm.
the pain, living through pain, that is not
Mm.
temporary. And again, they're having these thoughts because I don't want to hurt anymore. People are
Yeah.
not having thoughts of waking up like, I think it'll be great to die. No,
Yeah.
it's me enduring that
Yeah.
is very difficult. So it's not temporary. And I just really want to take a moment and just have people really reflect. So if we know that suicide is an option,
Mm-hmm.
and okay, I wake up and I know that I can end my own life. I'm
Mm-hmm.
tired of this. I'm exhausted. It's a lot going on. I don't feel safe. It seems like there's no out. I can just end my life.
Mm-hmm.
But every day I don't. I am fighting against the one thing that I know will work for me.
Mm-hmm.
That takes strength. A lot of people, it has this connotation that, like, oh, they weak.
Mm.
Like, that takes strength to fight.
Yeah.
That takes strength to even think of, damn, okay, I can make it one more day, or I can just make it one more hour. I could just make it through this school day. I could just make it through this work day. Like, these people who are contemplating suicide and people who complete suicide, that wasn't just the spur of the moment. Now,
Mm.
there are instances where that is true. People who
Yeah.
are experiencing psychosis, people who are drug induced, there are means to where it is spur of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
People again, but we're not focusing on that. We're just speaking in general. They have been thinking about this for so long
Mm-hmm.
and fighting against the one thing that will bring them relief. That takes courage and that takes bravery. And I want to just create space, especially if anybody is listening to this who has suffered from ideation, who is currently experiencing ideation. You are brave, you are courageous, and each day you are fighting a fight that some people may not know. And you are, oh, I find myself getting emotional. I
Mm-hmm.
have a student who took their life. And as
Mm-hmm.
hard as he tried to fake his smile and everything for us, he gave into the one thing he felt, okay, well, stop my pain,
Yeah.
and I need everyone to know that he was brave. And anyone like him and experiencing what he experienced is brave and courageous as well. One thing I want to normalize in this moment, stop saying committed suicide. Stop saying thinking of committed suicide. Committed has a very negative connotation. People commit crimes. People commit heinous acts. And we're gonna debunk that here.
Mm-hmm.
We can just say it for what it is. Are you having thoughts of ending your life? Are you having thoughts of, and you got to be careful with even asking hurting yourself, because non-suicidal self-injury. I may be having thoughts of hurting myself, but not necessarily killing myself.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting to ask about suicide, ask about suicide. Are you having
Yeah.
thoughts of killing yourself? Are you having thoughts of suicide? Don't tiptoe around, and we'll get into that for how you
Yeah.
should show up. But
Or don't sugarcoat it. And
mm-hmm,
asking will not plant the idea in the person's head. It won't.
it
As
will not.
therapists, when we ask, it's very straightforward. Do you want to kill yourself?
Absolutely.
And asking that question is not going to plant that seed or that idea in the person's head, because the idea comes from themselves. You can't just plant something like that in somebody's head to say, oh, you know what? She talked about it, so I'm going to kill myself. It doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. And if you ask, you are showing that you're a safe space. And this
Mm-hmm.
is so important for children, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times it's so taboo and we don't want to talk about it. And why would they think that? And if
Mm-hmm.
you ask a child, you thinking about killing yourself, or have you heard of suicide? They now connect you with, you're safe and
Mm-hmm.
you know about suicide. These children are walking around thinking that adults don't know anything about it because we don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But when an adult finally says something, then it's like, oh, you know about it. Oh, it's not a secret. Oh, I used to do so many screeners
Mm-hmm.
at my last school, and they're like, what is going on? But
Mm-hmm.
I asked that question,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're like, oh, you know about it? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I do. Do you? you know, and then we kind of get into that, or I'll ask a question like, do you wish you can go to sleep and just not wake up? And they're like,
Mhm.
yeah, sometimes when this is going on, boom. Now I already have, they're thinking about it and what's the cause. Now I can
Mhm.
connect things. So yeah, that's so important. You won't just plant the thought. If anything, you will let them know that you're aware,
Yeah.
and that'll be helpful. So yeah. And one thing that just came to mind, and then we can move on, because I was thinking about the school, and then it triggered the thought of someone
Mhm.
asked me one day, like, how are you doing? And I said, I'm not okay, but that's okay.
Mhm.
And they said, well, I know you're not thinking about hurting yourself. You wouldn't do anything stupid like that.
Mm.
Y'all, take yourself out of it. Take that judgment out of it. That may
Yeah.
not have been stupid to someone.
Yeah.
Think about it. I'm fighting every day.
Mhm.
And so now you're not a safe space because you're going to judge me for, whatever I'm thinking. So just be very, very mindful. And I want to put in a space that we're going to have to go back to the shit that was normal for us and say, hey, that ain't normal no more.
Yeah.
Hey, that's
Yeah.
prejudice. Hey, there's bias in that. Like, we're going
Mhm.
to have to do that.
Mhm.
And that sucks when you are unlearning what you know. But
Mhm.
that's the only way that we can destigmatize and create a new.
Unlearning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unlearning and learning new things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I feel like I went on a few tangents. Hopefully I was on topic. But so important. So important. So yeah. So now we're going to get into some very few lyrics and social media, or just kind of how things are presented in social media. And
Mhm.
a disclaimer I want to give, and it's going to be on the slide. I am only referencing these lyrics to discuss suicide ideation. This is
Mhm.
not talking about the artist. This is not talking about where they are currently in their mental wellness in their journey. And the lyrics I'm going to pull up are from some of my favorite songs. So I was telling Flora that of like, I went through my playlist, right? Like as a mental health professional, I went through my playlist and was like, let me pull some people, right? Like let me
Mhm.
let you see that it's so normal. And
Mhm.
again, I'm not listening to it like, oh, okay, you think about hurting yourself. It's not that. It's
No.
these people are sharing their real experience. And the artists that I'm about to show, we know their music is their diary. So they
Mhm.
are sharing their real life experience, not a like, I'm trying to front and it's the club and it's the money. Like they're like, no, I'm struggling.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to present these things in different ways. And some of these also have engaging in those risky behaviors to where I don't want to do it myself, but whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
And so just a few, and then we have a very honorable mention on the
Mhm.
next slide.
Yeah.
And when we get to him, and I'll have my tangent there, because baby, that album got me.
They probably know who we're talking
Exactly.
about.
Yes. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just me
Mhm.
kind of mentioning some things that is on my current playlist of, hey, that's actually ideation. And so
Mhm.
we have Janae, and
Yeah.
Janae is a spectrum herself, right?
Yeah.
She's going to
Yeah,
meditate with
definitely.
you. She's going to ground with you.
Yeah.
She's going to, you owe me blood. She's going to love her. And so she
Uh-huh.
has this song called Drinking and Driving. Says, I got one hand on this bottle, one foot on the gas. I'm searching for trouble. I'm going too fast. I'm running from shadows. I'm hoping to crash. And guys, these are like copy and pasted lyrics.
Yeah.
And so here, well, Flora, I'll let you go. I'll let you kind of share your sentiments on this.
When you read shadows, running from shadows, it automatically went, there's something she's running from, right? And it's not
Mhm.
just shadows.
Mhm.
And the reckless behavior
Yep.
is a bottle, foot on the gas,
I'm driving.
searching for trouble, like she's saying, and she's hoping to crash. She's saying it herself. That's what she wants. That's what she's seeking because
Absolutely.
of the pain that she's feeling.
Absolutely. I'm running. And when you say shadows, and we won't tangent here, but y'all, that shadow work.
Mhm.
Let me tell you. Okay, I have 3 journals, and I'm like, let me go visit these shadows because what's going on? And
Mhm.
shadows, just very briefly, are the parts of you that you don't want to have light.
Mhm.
So oftentimes they're seen as negative, and a lot of times they're not negative. They're defense mechanisms where
Mhm.
they work in opposition for what we want, but they helped us at one point. Right?
Yeah.
And so when she says running from shadows, that can be anything, but even just thinking mental health wise, I am running from the parts that I don't want to have light.
Yeah.
When you give it a little bit of light, it becomes less heavy. But
Mm.
I digress. But yeah, and this in the music to this song, like the actual music, the beat, it's
Yeah.
very calming. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something else to be very mindful of, especially like if you have children, you have siblings, like listen to their music,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times it's not, oh yeah, I'm listening to this and now I want to hurt myself, but they're connecting with, I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so important because suicide ideation is not just because you're lonely.
Mm-mm.
You
It's you don't
may,
want to tell them.
yeah, it's not just because you're lonely. It's not just because you're depressed. It may just
Mm-mm.
be pain. It may just be I'm tired. It may just be because I don't see anything different or I keep trying and nothing's changing.
Yeah.
So anybody, community is always going to lift someone up, always. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of times people are finding, how do you think I have these lyrics from these songs from so many years ago? They're
Yeah.
connecting in a way to find feeling part of a community of like, I'm not alone in this thought. I'm not alone in running from shadows or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case may be. So then we have Lil Wayne. We all know Lil Wayne. We all know Weezy F Baby. Okay. And so
Yeah.
this is actually a
Mm-hmm.
song that he has with Solange, and he was a feature. And it's called Mad. And the song is really detailing basically racial battle fatigue of
Mm-hmm.
I am black and that is a problem for everybody else. And I gotta feel it. And here
Mm-hmm.
he says, are you mad because the judge ain't give me more time? And when I attempted suicide, I didn't die. I remember how mad I was on that day. So even though the attempt is present, the ideation is still present
Mm-hmm.
because he's reflecting, like, I'm mad that it didn't happen. So even thinking of that when you experience ideation, it doesn't just go away. Oh, I never have those thoughts again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's in the back of your mind or, in the front of your mind that this is an
Yeah.
option
Yeah.
for sure.
It's very much there. And I think we've missed saying suicide is the last option. And
Mm,
once it's there,
mhm,
it's hard for it to just go away.
mhm, mhm. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Especially when people have already, and again, that's not what this is about, but when people have already attempted,
Mm-hmm.
and again, like we talked about, there's levels. Maybe someone just had a plan. Like,
Mm-hmm.
look, if I really meant it, I don't mean it right now. Because, right, I can make a plan and not really mean to go through with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, guys, those are levels. We're not getting into that, but just know that there's different levels to this. It's not just, oh, I have a thought, now let's go do it. And
Yeah.
so, just even thinking of that, that doesn't go away
Mm-mm.
because I know it's always an option.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So getting into Brent Fayez, and everybody's like, oh, he's dark. He's a narcissist. He's this, he's that. And one thing I appreciate about his music is that he's using it as a diary. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's this song that he has called Clouded. And I'll read the lyrics. So it says, now I'm at the turn up looking lonely. Then they wonder why I'm quiet at them house parties because everybody sees me. And then he goes down. It's like two more bars. And then he says, but they don't know I'm fighting demons. I feel like dying every season. I've been swimming in the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I heard this, I was running. Like he dropped a new album. I'm like, oh snap, let me go work out to this. And when that came, I'm like, oh, he's hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like he doesn't want to be here. Like I remember stopping, like, oh, he doesn't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking someone like, hey, did you listen? They were like, oh yeah, I like that song. And I'm like, oh, did anything stand out? And I was like, no. Like I'm like, oh, and we miss it. And this
Yeah.
was before being a counselor. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Did
And
anything
the
resonate
thing,
with you? Yeah.
I was gonna say the thing, going back of what you said, people listen to music, but they don't listen to it. They don't
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
It's the beat, it's the way they're rapping, it's
Yeah.
the way they're singing, but it's not paying attention to the lyrics.
Yeah. Because it doesn't get, I feel like dying every season.
Yeah.
And that's something else I really want to, now that it just triggered a thought of having a feeling of dying and having a desire of dying are not
Mm.
necessarily the same, or a thought. So I can have a thought of dying and then a feeling of dying, but that doesn't mean that the two are the same. So I can have a thought. So there's a song by Abraham Alexander. Nope. What's that man's name? Yeah, I was right. Abraham Alexander. And he has a song. He's like, if I was to die today. And he's kind of talking about like, what would I do differently? How would I show up? He probably had a thought. What if I died today?
Mhm.
But he doesn't have the desire of I
Mhm.
want to die today. So just really distinguishing that they're not always the same. And I know
Mhm.
that gets a little confusing and a little complex, but you can have the thought without the desire. Uh,
Mhm.
but I just want to put that because he's like, I feel like dying every season. So here he probably doesn't have a plan of like how I would do it.
Mhm.
It's just heavy.
Mhm.
Year round, this shit is heavy. And
Yeah.
that's just where I am. So
Another thing that stand out to me from the lyrics was when he said, "Because everybody see me, but they don't know I'm fighting demons."
mm,
Everybody's there. You can not be lonely. You can be surrounded with a lot of
yeah.
people, but you can still feel lonely inside. They can still see you and you can smile at them. You can be funny, you can be goofy, but they don't
Mhm.
know that inside you're dying, that you're just, like he said, I'm fighting demons and nobody knows it because they're
Right.
not seeing actually me. They're seeing what I'm putting out for them to see.
Yep. And look at where he's at. I'm at this turn up.
At a party. Yep.
Nobody in there like, bro, you good? You got ideation right now? Like they like turn up. You know what I mean? Or like run that song back. So that's also important, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And again, I'm not trying to reach, but just kind of thinking about the environments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is this his escape? Is this his distraction? Or is this shit? I'm about to get into some reckless behavior and whatever happens tonight happens. You never know. So
Mm-hmm.
environments are really important. And then the final one before we get into our honorable mention, is Tupac, who is my soulmate. So this is from one of his songs, Changes, like one of his a huge song, very inspirational song at that, very inspirational. And the very first lines, he says, I see no changes, wake up in the morning and I ask myself, is life worth living or should I blast myself? I'm tired of being poor and even worse, I'm black. And then, you know, it finishes. So even thinking of that racial battle fatigue
Yeah.
of like going through this life with this plight of my race and
Mm-hmm.
what that means when I show up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all, this is real. Like we going through real life shit. People are going through real life experiences, real life experiences. And again, this is the disclaimer. These lyrics are just to talk about the topic, ideation, the reckless behavior, the not being seen, the putting on the mask, the wish or the desire, the
Mm-hmm.
thought, not about where they are in their journey. And some of them, the journey is over, you know. But yeah. So we're gonna get into Sir Cuddy.
Yeah.
Kid Cudi. When I tell
Mm-hmm.
you, Man on the Moon did something for my entire life, and that entire album was ideation, like
Mm-hmm.
dang near.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Flora, I'll let you kind of lead this one off.
Um, we were talking about it before we even
Mhm.
started the recording, talking about the first person that we automatically thought of when we thought of lyrics of
Yep.
suicide ideation, Kid
Yeah.
Cudi,
Hmm.
because they're there. Writes down exactly what he's feeling, exactly
Yep.
what he is thinking, and the same as what we talked about before, not being seen, being there but not being seen.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's very important when it comes to suicide ideation,
Hmm.
is that you're presenting yourself as someone that's happy,
Hmm.
someone that is um, funny,
Hmm.
someone that's humorous,
Hmm.
but you're not feeling that way inside.
Hmm.
And because you are presenting this persona to the world,
Yeah.
they don't see exactly that you're suffering in the inside. And
Yeah.
he describes it perfectly in
Hmm.
the album, talking about what he's feeling and that he's pursuing happiness and he's not achieving it.
Yeah, yeah. And even we referenced this, but the soundtrack to my life. And then like
Mhm.
the final bar is like I am happy that's just the saddest lie, or I am really happy that's just the saddest lie. But then
Mhm.
you fast forward in the album, you get Mr. Solo Dolo. So
Mhm.
it can present in so many different ways of like, oh, let's turn up. I'm at this turn up. Oh, he gonna come through, right? But it's
Yeah.
like I'm fighting demons. Hey, I'm happy. That's the saddest lie. I'm on the pursuit of happiness.
Uh-huh.
he's talking about night terrors. So again, shadows, running.
Yes.
It's like it's
Okay.
all coming together. That's why he was the
Uh-huh.
honorary mention. But one thing I do want to highlight about Cuddy is that he never ever shies away from what he's experiencing. And even when a few years ago, or probably a couple years ago now, when he came out that he was going to rehab to help support with his ideation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that was huge because I think at the time it was like some beef or something going on. I don't know. I don't remember. But I just remember he came out and was like, yeah. And I think he did a red table talk and kind of got into it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, it can present so many ways. And
Yeah.
it's not to say that their music is like, oh, don't listen to their music. Like, you find community. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's one album that Cuddy refuses to talk about in interviews because he's like, no, that part in my life, that time in my life, I'm not going there.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a diary. Like, okay, I got it out.
Yeah.
Now let's keep moving.
It's
Um,
a dark place he doesn't want to revisit.
hmm Absolutely. Um, and everybody who, again, is experiencing ideation is not lonely. They have
Mhm.
several people around,
Oh yeah.
several people.
Mm-hmm.
I know Cuddy gets flooded with, you saved my life. I even said it like that album. Because
Mm-hmm.
when Man on the Moon came out, I was suicidal myself, if I can self disclose. And it was more of, mm, because I've never attempted, so I'll be transparent in that way. But during that time, I think I was 19, 20, and
Mm-hmm.
it had a plan, wrote my letters, did all
Mm-hmm.
that, but it was more of like, is this it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it always going to be this pain and trying to work through this pain?
Mm-hmm.
And then having this album of somebody saying, like, hey, I've been working through this pain. It's like, oh, okay. It's a
Mm-hmm.
process. It's a
Mm-hmm.
process. And of course, I'm not in that place anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
very, very aware of how it presents. And sometimes with ideation, it is a relief. And I know this sounds very strange to say, of like, what, into your life? It's a relief because you're like, I can't achieve something that will take this away.
Yeah. There's no way out but this.
Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, didn't plan to self disclose. So, hope that didn't scare anybody away, but just letting you know this is like a real life,
Mm-hmm.
it's part of the human experience for some people.
Yeah.
And you can overcome, it's not my testimony, but you can work through it. Not just, oh, I listen to music and that's it. Oh, I got
Mm-hmm.
me a man and that's it. No, you just filling voids and filling holes and never working through it. So mental wellness is holistic, and get some help.
Yeah.
Get some help.
Thank
Get
you
some
for
help.
sharing, Bianca.
Of course. If it helps, if it edifies, I'm here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, a few things to just kind of share, and a lot of this may not really apply to adults. So we want to just kind of give you information in general.
Mm-hmm.
It can present different ways. So when we're looking at the top left and you see Kermit, Seward, and Slide.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times teenagers or adolescents are talking in code. So it
Yeah.
doesn't get flagged on social media and reported. So
Mm-hmm.
this is saying, I want to commit suicide. But
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying that, they gave like a puzzle, almost
Mm-hmm.
like a riddle. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is something that's very prevalent. We see SH, that self
Mm-hmm.
harm, or I want to unalive myself, because if you put die or kill, that's going to flag social media. People are going to report it. But here, it's almost like it goes undetected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard them also use delete myself or delete my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So erase, no longer exists.
Yeah.
But let me not get flagged for social media.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's something that's very important, especially if someone is experiencing ideation, and especially if they're younger. Look at their social media presence. Look
Mm-hmm.
at what they're following, who they're following, the content, what they're liking, the hashtags that they're following,
But
because
they're retweeting all of that
like
or
that's really important.
reposting.
Hmm
Uh-huh.
Absolutely, because they're finding community,
Mm-hmm.
but it may not be the community that will help.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we talked about we talked about some other things that, were not for this, but it can entice. So if they
Mhm.
get exposed to very graphic information, very detailed information, very graphic images of death
Mhm.
or ending one's life, it can entice and it can
Yeah,
make
and
just
we can even give the example of the show. We Know What Show on Netflix that came out a couple of years ago, that they
uh-huh.
had to delete the scene because it was graphic. You
Mhm.
saw exactly what was going on and what was
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And children are watching this because there's a hype on social media to watch it. Oh, it's really good. Everybody recommends it. But
yeah.
then they see this graphic scene going on and it was totally unexpected.
Right. So yeah, and then just like emojis. Now we're adults, right? But everybody listening to this may not be adult, or some people may have siblings, younger siblings, older
Mhm.
siblings, children,
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. We use these emojis, right? In common language. The casket, baby, all day. Was something's funny for me. Okay. Uh, something's fire. Like, oh, that's fire, or I like that, or like the bottom right, that crying was like, oh, I'm great. Work
Oh
is
yeah.
great. You know what I mean? Of like
Suffering through the pain, smiling through the pain, right?
absolutely, but it's very important. Again, when we're speaking of ideation, or if you know someone or you're concerned, these are some things that you can be aware of. So sometimes, like the razor, the knife, the scissors, that could be self harm. The fire, self harm through burning. I
Hmm.
think you briefly mentioned that being one form.
Yeah.
And then attempt, so suicide, completing suicide. We don't say committed,
Hmm.
completing suicide. And sometimes people are committed to suicide, but they don't die by suicide. So that's
Yeah.
a whole nother thing. But the attempt, and then the emotional pain or distress. So those various emojis at the bottom, right? We use them commonly, and we don't
Yeah.
want to assume like, oh, girl, you have an ideation, just because they're using them, but just be mindful of that.
Hmm.
So yeah, and again, this is not an exhaustive list.
Yeah.
This is just some examples that could help
Yeah.
and make you aware, especially if you have children that you're concerned about, because
Mhm.
they're going to speak through emojis. Okay, so we are going to end. Flora's going to kick it off for us in our closure of how you can show up. So we didn't just want to present information, give you
Mhm.
some things to think about and look at and be aware of, and then leave you. We
Yeah.
always want to, again, we want to empower. So
Hmm.
this is how you can show up. There's so many other ways that you can show up. Again, it's not an exhaustive list. So we'll have some on the slide, but I'm going to let Flora kick it off, and then we'll just piggyback.
Yeah. The one that I really want to talk about that I think I've been mentioning
Mm-hmm.
throughout the discussion is empathy, being empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
I think as humans, we lack empathy with one another.
Yeah.
It's the being kind, the not being judgmental, listening, just showing up for someone and being there. Just your presence being there can be enough for
Yeah.
someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we don't give enough attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
Of even if I'm just there, I'm not talking, we're not
Right.
doing anything but laying down in the same room,
Right.
just that is enough.
Right.
And in order to be able to do that, you have to be empathetic,
Mm-hmm.
without judgment, like you said, not being judgmental of what the person is going through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we can, like you said, the other one is be curious, parents or grown-ups of children, being curious of what is going on with them, what is
Mm-hmm.
making them do the things that they're doing, the actions, I think the what is the most important.
Absolutely.
And the maybe even the how,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not so much the why or the
Right.
who,
Mm-hmm.
but the what. The
Mm-hmm.
how can I be there for you? How can I support you? How can I be a safe place for you? Uh,
Absolutely.
how can I support you in what you need?
Right. Yeah. And speaking of the what, of course, what is causing this? What brought
Mhm.
this on? But
Mhm.
also, you have to create space for your discomfort. It is
Mhm.
not easy to show up and be present for someone, especially when it may be something that you don't understand. And naturally, we want to seek understanding first.
Mhm.
When we're talking about ideation, it is not about your understanding. Show up,
Mhm.
be present,
Yeah.
right? You're going to have to put your desire to understand and make sense of it to the side, because this human needs you. This life
Yeah.
needs you. And you mentioned grown-ups who are parents to children. also adult children. There are some
Mhm.
of us who are,
Yeah.
not children anymore, but we are still somebody's child. And
Yeah.
it's almost like, oh, well, literally the arm, oh, well. And it's like, no, we still are children,
Mhm.
um, or somebody's child. And so I think that's really important. So, yeah, just be curious. And again, your curiosity, not for the intent to understand, but just how can I show up? Or, hey, I am really uncomfortable with this, but I want to be present.
Mhm.
How can I show up? How can I let you know when something's a little uncomfortable for me to hear, but I don't want to offend you? Like, be honest, be open, have that open dialogue because they care so much more that they have somebody to talk to
Mhm.
versus, oh, you're uncomfortable. Now you're just trying to make me feel good. Now you want some toxic positivity. It'll
Mhm.
be all right. Just be happy. Girl,
Yeah.
if I could do that, I wouldn't be here. Like, you know what I mean? So,
Or stop being sad or stop hurting. I
yeah.
always like telling my clients, let it hurt for however long it needs to hurt for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a timeline and it's very different for everyone. It's not
Absolutely.
going to look the same. Just because someone can get over this in a week doesn't mean you have to get over it in a week. Just because
Mm-hmm.
they tell you get over it now doesn't mean you have to get over it because they don't know how it hurt you or it affected you.
Yeah. And a lot of times you won't get over it. You have to get through it. And that's the
Yeah.
journey.
Uh-huh.
Going through, facing.
Uh-huh.
Like Janae, those lyrics said, I'm running from shadows. Turn and face it. Turn and face
Yeah.
that shadow. Okay, you right there. I don't like it. I want to get away from you, but face it. And
Mm-hmm.
that is how you get to the healing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times for us, I'm speaking for us, women of color, women who do the real inner work on our own, not just, oh, I have a degree and now I'm a counselor. Like we do the inner work on ourselves. That shit ain't easy. And it
No.
don't stop. It's
Mm-mm.
continue. I told you, like something will come up and I'm like, let me go review these shadows.
Yeah.
Or
And
let
it's
me,
exhausting. It's exhausting. You can't lie and say, oh, it's easy. It's not easy. It is exhausting.
oh. And that's gonna be a whole nother segment on
Mhm.
the impact of healing. You
Yeah.
get what I'm saying? Like we see it's greener. No, your body is tired. Like your mind is tired. You're not gonna care about certain things no more, or when you want to care. But that's a whole nother topic. Connect others to resources. If you nothing else, there's gonna be a slide after this. Screenshot this. You get what I'm saying? And at least, hey, if you're thinking about it, this is what I heard. Or hey, I know you can call 988. Just something. So just letting them know what is available to them and believe the person.
Mhm.
Believe the person. It's not
Yeah.
about your understanding. It's not about what you think. It's not about, well, it's not about the sense you made in your mind. Believe the person. If they say they're hurting, they're hurting. They
Mhm.
say this has happened to them, this has happened to them. Because that gets to the what. What is
Yeah.
causing this? For how long?
Yeah.
You never know. Believe the person.
Mhm.
Believe the person. People don't typically lie about pain.
No.
And it's
Mhm.
their pain. It's not about, well, I went through worse. And who gives a damn? I'm not you. You
Yeah,
get what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. We're going back to the journey. Everyone has a different journey, a unique
mm,
journey, and everybody gets through this journey by different ways. And
absolutely.
it doesn't affect everyone the same way. It
Hmm.
affects people very differently.
Yeah, and we got to get out of that. It ain't about you.
Mm-mm. And I
Somebody else
think
talking ain't about you.
we live in a world where it is about how the person is feeling, how somebody else is feeling about your situation. And we're not asking you how you're feeling. We have to help the person that's going through this
Hmm.
because they are who matters. They are the one that in that moment they need you.
Yes, we have definitely transitioned. And when you said how other people feel about your situation, other people don't even know how they feel
Mm-mm.
99.9% of the times. They have thoughts and they
Yes.
are thinking their thoughts are feelings. And we
Mm-hmm.
always say feelings are valid. That's how you feel. Your thoughts are not feelings. They are
Mm-mm.
not the same. And if I can preach anything every day, feelings are not facts. Your thoughts are not feelings. When you start, I feel like that's a thought. Stop it right there.
Yeah.
Right? Get to the feeling of it.
Or
But
even opinions, right? Thoughts and opinions.
why did social media tell us that all our opinions mean something? Dear God, give me strength. Okay, I'm about to tangent. See, I caught it. But that's so important because a lot of people are not sharing. And there's a situation that happened that I noticed on social media, and I don't want to disclose in case that person, because this person doesn't even know that I looked at their situation and
Mhm.
was moved and disturbed by the criticism that they got
Mhm.
for being vocal and how they chose to be vocal. And so I don't want to give too much just in case that person, to not make them feel anything. Uh, but there was so much opinion and
Mhm.
judgment and bias for somebody else literally saying, "Hey, I'm overcoming."
Yeah.
And immediately went to, "What? Why? I don't understand." And it's like, you're not
You don't
even
have to
curious.
understand. You don't have to
So
understand.
think about that. Think about the energy and the load you are dropping on someone else,
Mhm.
not knowing what they're facing or having an idea of what they're facing, but you're making it about you. And a lot of times it's hard for us to sit with our discomfort. So let's
Mhm.
be real about that. It's very
Yeah.
hard. Even
Mhm.
as counselors, it is difficult to show up
Mhm.
and be present, be empathetically present, right? We
Mhm.
can be present, but being empathetically present for something that may be overwhelming or triggering or, new. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's really important. So I'm gonna go to the next slide that has the resources.
Yeah.
And so very few, very few. We didn't want to do an exhaustive list. We don't know where you're listening from or watching from. We're in Texas, so we didn't want to make everything specific to Texas, but 988 is national. You
Mhm.
can call, you can text. If you go to their website, you can chat.
Mhm.
And it's suicide and crisis. I think that's so important. So
Mhm.
important because some people may have ideation and some people may actually be in crisis of like, I want to do it now,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
I'm not okay, or I don't feel like I'm in reality, or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
You can text home, or if you're in Texas, you can text TX to 741-741. The Trevor Project. So it is for queer individuals, specifically adolescents and early adults. And it's a
Mhm.
safe place. They even have like an escape button. So if you go to their website, they have like the emergency escape button in case somebody comes by or, is trying to look at what you're doing. Kind of like the domestic violent websites have,
Yeah.
to where if you push that button, it'll turn to something else.
Mhm.
And so you can text start to 678-678. That is available. You can always call 911. And I know in our demographics,
Mhm.
we ain't always trying to call the police, especially when I need help.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? I need help for a mental health issue. I may not always want to call the police. I can't speak for other states. I do know here, like in Houston, we have MCOT. So sometimes you call the police, but they'll connect you to a mental health professional
Mhm.
first,
Mhm.
that can come out. And you can go into any hospital. You
Yeah.
can literally walk into what's that called? What's the clinics called? Urgent care.
Okay.
Yeah, you can walk into an urgent care. You can walk into any hospital and say, "I'm having thoughts of hurting myself," and you will get
Mhm.
help immediately.
Yeah.
It's help is available.
Yeah.
Help
It is.
is available, and we're counselors, licensed counselors associates in Texas. So you can definitely reach out if you need more resources. If you're thinking of getting services, if we can't help, we'll connect you with someone. Yeah, this is where we are. I hope if nothing else, we have did our plight to destigmatize and normalize this human experience that some people experience. Yeah. So did you have anything that you wanted to share before we close out, Flora?
Yeah, that they're not alone. You're not alone.
Mhm.
There is help. It's just you need to look for it, unfortunately, in the world that we live in the communities that we're part of, being
Yeah.
people of color. It may not be accepting within our communities, but there's always someone that is available, that is supportive.
Mhm.
Whether it's us as therapists or other therapists in your state,
Yeah.
that you find the art of color. Just know that the help is there, and unfortunately, you have to look for it.
Yeah.
Um, but that you're not alone, and it's there. Just you have to look at the right places.
Yeah. And there are people like us who are working, this is maybe a small step or a huge step to destigmatize this and just speak that
Mhm.
it's part of the human experience from some individuals, and it doesn't always have to be this way if you this is what you're experiencing now. I know. Yeah, so we're going to close out. We're wishing you safe thoughts. We're wishing you healthy thoughts. We're wishing you self-love. We're wishing you safety. We're wishing you community. We're wishing you emotional language,
Yeah.
right? To communicate. Wishing you regulation, hopefully co-regulation, where you have
Mhm.
somebody there with you, um, supporting you. And yeah, and until next time,
Yeah.
just
Till
wishing you
next.
mental wellness.